Welcome to episode 34 of the podcast. I'm your host and founder of Yes You Coaching, Anna Manning, and today we're going to be talking about a situation that unfortunately a lot of my clients find themselves in, and you may have found yourself in. And the situation is when everyone else believes in you and you don't. So let's say this is you. You might have got a promotion, you might have become more senior, you might just, be naturally rising up the ranks in your career, and everyone else around you trusts you to make good decisions, to do the work, to lead your team or your people. They believe in you. They don't really question you or doubt you. But on the inside, you have more questions and doubts about you being in the job, about your skills, about your abilities. You don't believe in yourself as strongly as they all appear to believe in you. And the reason that I wanted to do an episode about this is because it's not an easy position to be in. And a lot of people will never even share that they find themselves in this position, because who are you going to share it with? You can't exactly share it with all the other people who do believe in you, or for most people, that's not possible. For most people, they can't share it with the boss who's just put them in the job. They can't share it with the people around them, their peers, and they can't share it with the people who are leading them. So it can end up being quite a lonely place to be when everyone else believes in you and you don't. And I've coached on this issue many, many times. And the other reason that I wanted to do a podcast about it is because I know that you can go from being in a position where everyone else believes in you and you don't, to being in a position where everyone else believes in you and you believe it too. So even though it can feel really not nice and lonely and difficult, it is an issue which you can work on. And it is an issue which can change. So we're going to look at it a little bit in the podcast today. And you might be thinking, yep, been in that position, or you might be in that position right now, or you might know someone else who's in that position. Share the podcast with them if you do, because for some people, this is the first time they're going to have even heard it talked about. They might have been keeping this inside for a long time. So what do I hear over and over again when this is the problem that comes to me in coaching? And usually it's from leaders who will say, well, people like working for me, people don't leave or have a good retention rate, or, I get on with the people around me. So I know that people like working for me. I know that people trust me because they've put me in this position. I gain this promotion, or I'm now head of department, or whatever it is. So I know that people trust me to do this job because I'm in this job. And I know that the people around me trust me to make the decisions. They trust me to lead. They trust me to do good work. And they trust me to oversee that in other people. So in other words, it all looks fine from the outside. But when this is a problem for my clients, it doesn't feel so good on the inside. And on the inside, what this might look like is having to, or I should say, when you're having this issue that everyone else believes in you and you don't, these are the kind of behaviors, or these are the kind of things that you might be doing. So you might be perfecting everything, making sure everything is 100%. That might be the work that you're producing. It might be the work that other people are producing. It might be thinking that you have to be perfect in everything that you do, say, how you deliver everything. It might also look like wanting to check your decisions with other people. And sometimes you might do that. And sometimes you might not, because it might not be appropriate for your level or wherever you're at. But there might be the temptation to do that. Another thing I've noticed a lot is wanting to get more feedback or input from your boss. And this can be a tricky one because feedback from people around us, yes, it can be really useful. Point out to us where we could be doing something better, where we've got room for development. But it's sneaky because a lot of the time when I'm coaching on this issue, it poses as that, oh yeah, I need more feedback to know if I'm doing well. But actually, when we get down to it, when we kind of uncover that a little bit, what ends up coming out is that I'm just assuming that I'm not doing a good job, or I'm telling myself I'm not doing a good enough job. So actually, I need my boss to come in and tell me that I am. It's not really about the learning points, although it can be. It's mostly about a kind of reassurance, which when you don't believe in yourself, you're really going to want that kind of reassurance, right? Because you need it to sort of build you back up. The other thing that I notice is there might be a lot of internal mental chatter. So that's going to be slightly different for everyone. But when you're in this position where you don't believe in yourself as much as everyone else does, there's usually some internal chatter, and it can sound like, why am I here? I don't know what I'm doing. Like, who am I that these people are all trusting me? And it can be a bit more subtle than that. Like, there's the outright voice of, you don't know what you're doing. You should never have got this job. You shouldn't be here. Like, you're fooling everyone. There's that. And that can be quite blatant, like internal chatter. But I think the internal chatter can also be a bit more subtle. The kind of self-doubt, which could sound like, oh, do you think that was the right decision? You better check on that again. Oh dear, that could be wrong. Right? So it's not the kind of really harsh, critical, you don't know what you're doing, everyone thinks you're an idiot. It's not quite that. It's just the more kind of creeping self-doubt stuff. And usually for clients who I'm working with on this issue, this internal chatter can be a bit of a nightmare, a bit of a nuisance. The other thing is thinking that you need to justify yourself. I've seen this quite a lot. And I think it comes from assuming that you're not doing a good job, or having the thought that you're not doing a good job, or you're not doing good enough. And then thinking that you have to justify yourself. And some people will say, oh, I go into like justifying mode, or a mode where I'm trying to kind of prove it was right for you to give me this job. I do know what I'm doing. It's like overdoing things, over delivering. Another one that I've seen quite a bit is people worrying that they don't quite fit. I coach quite a few people that find themselves in positions where they might not be like everyone else around them. Whether that's to do with gender, or whether it's to do with neurodiversity, or whether it's to do with race, whether it's to do with what kind of school that you went to, what kind of accent you have. This can play into that. And yes, it's more difficult for all of the workplace is more difficult for anyone who has a minority characteristic, although gender is not a minority characteristic. But yes, we know that the workplace is going to be more challenging for all of those categories of people that I just mentioned, which maybe you probably fall into one of them. And that can often come out when we're talking about this issue. You know, I'm looking at these people around me now and I'm thinking, I don't fit here. Or I'm the odd one out. Or just feeling like a kind of a loneliness based on the fact that there's whatever part of you it is that we're thinking about, that is not necessarily replicated in your immediate environment or within your peers or upwards in your organization. Another thing that I notice with this issue is there tends to be a worry that people are judging you, and a worry about how you're being perceived. And I never know with my clients whether it is true that somebody else is judging them negatively or not. Because I only work with my one particular client, right? And in any given environment, in any given scenario in our workplaces, somebody could be judging us. That could be happening. Some could be positive, some could be negative, some could be, I don't know, in between. But when we're in this position where everyone else believes in us and we don't, a lot of the time we're going to be assuming that everyone's judging us or perceiving us negatively. And that makes it very difficult to do the things that we're trying to do, whether that's speaking up, whether that's challenging, whether that's presenting, whether that's doing high, high level person things. And this one is it's a bit insidious, because what it does is, imagine you put on a pair of glasses that are like the everyone's judging you glasses, and then go into your workplace and try and work a normal day. Well, very difficult, because you're going to see evidence all around you that everybody's judging you. And this is really, really hard. It can make it difficult to connect with people. It could certainly make it difficult to show any vulnerability whatsoever. You might find you harden. You might find you become disinterested. You might just find you become overwhelmed or anxious. But that is not an easy thing to deal with. The next thing is second guessing contributions or things that you say. I see this in terms of sometimes people will not say the thing that's in their head, even though they have a contribution to make, even though they have an opinion to share. There's something that's come to their mind that they want to share. They might not share it when they're in this position of worrying that everyone else is believing in them, but they know they're not quite believing in themselves. It's difficult to believe in your own opinions and the stuff that you want to say, even though you might tell me that logically you know it's right, or deep down you knew that you could have said that. So it might stop this person from making a contribution in the first place, but it also might have them kind of dissecting everything that they say after the event. And that's really difficult too. And if this is you, you know what I'm talking about, like coming away from every meeting and thinking, oh my God, why did I say that? Like, what was that about? Or, well, that didn't land very well, did it? I don't think they like that bit of challenge. Oh, everyone's going to think you're stupid for saying that. Or you didn't sound articulate. It's like being really badly heckled after after a show. And that kind of heckling, it's just a kind of self-doubt, really, but that's how it comes out. And it can make your job incredibly difficult, and it can make you less likely to speak up the next time, less likely to challenge the next time, and ironically, more likely to dissect your performance afterwards. The next one is thinking you need to know everything. And if you don't know everything, assuming that everyone's going to think that you're crap at your job. I see this a lot with people who've gone into new positions. It's like, well, when we scratch under the surface, like, well, I don't know everything. I was in my last job 8 years and I pretty much felt like I knew everything so I could be confident. And it's like, is knowing everything in this new job a reasonable expectation? Probably not. Like, you've definitely been hired because of your skills and experience and because you can do that job. But expecting yourself to know absolutely everything, it's just wild. You're just not going to. So when you have that expectation, and you obviously can't meet it, because who would be able to, 3 weeks, 2 months, even 6 months into a new job, then you believe in yourself less. Because you should be at 100%, and by God, you're not. You're at 60 or 70 or whatever it is. And then you're worrying about getting it all right. You have to spend time perfecting everything because you're afraid of getting it wrong. You're doubting your own decisions, and you feel like you have to justify being in the job. Imagine going into work every day and feeling like you have to justify why you're there. You might know, you might be in this position right now. But the result of all of that for the people that I've coached is that it's pretty exhausting. It can be quite anxiety provoking. And for a lot of people, it's, and this is my words, not theirs, but it seems a shame because they've worked really hard. They've got to a certain position and they're not really able to enjoy it because this thinking pattern, this idea that whilst everyone else trusts me, I don't trust myself. And let me be clear, no one's ever kind of put it to me in those terms. But when you're in that pattern of thinking, and it is just a belief, people will tell me it's based on fact. But when we actually look at the facts, sometimes the facts around it can be very scant. It is a mindset, it's a pattern of thinking. What do you do? So I've worked with clients, and I'm thinking of one particularly now where this was the goal. This was the whole focus around the work that we did together. I'm good at what I do, was what she decided she wanted to believe. When she was confident, she said, I'll believe that I'm good at what I do. I mean, the fact was she was already good at what she did. That's why she was in the position that she was in. But she wanted to go from knowing it in theory to actually believing it. And when we finished our coaching, and I was like, oh, where are you with that? She's like, oh, I just don't think about that anymore. I am good at what I do. Nonchalant. She said it completely nonchalant. And I was like, okay, mission accomplished. So how do you go from, like she did, how do you go from the position where everyone else believes in you and you don't, to everyone else believes in you and you do too? You can do that. You can believe in yourself just like other people believe in you. And think about it like this. If this is you, you're probably already fairly successful and you did it all without the comforting self-belief that other people might have. You've been dealing with that kind of self-doubt on the inside and still nailing it. Hats off to you. So just imagine for a second what you could do if you actually believed in yourself the same way everyone else does. But how do you do it? Well, you can come and work with me and I'll help you through it. But if you don't have the opportunity to do that, or you want to get started right this second, you've got to recognize what's getting in the way. So I find when I coach on this that there's some habits, there's some behaviors that crop up again and again and again, and these seem to be the culprits. These seem to be the things that are knocking somebody's self-belief, that are damaging somebody's self-belief. And I wrote down 4 here. So the first one was just around self-doubt. We talked about that before. So that's the talking in your head, like, why are you here? You don't know what you're doing. this isn't, this isn't acceptable. Do you really think that that's right? Everybody's judging you. All of that kind of self-doubt chatter in your head. Now, imagine that was your boss every day, all day. I think even the most confident person would end up with pretty low self-belief if they were hearing that said to them all day, every day. But that's what's happening if this is you. You're hearing that all day, every day. So it's very difficult to maintain. So when clients tell me, I know in theory that I'm good at this job, but I don't believe it. It's like, well, how could you when someone's talking that crap to you all day, every day? Very difficult. So you've got to recognize what's going on in your head. What does that mental internal chatter sound like around you and your skills and your abilities and the position that you're in? Know what's happening inside your head. And you might say it's perfectly obvious, but let me tell you, when I get people to write it down, they'll say, I barely really even knew that I was thinking that. You want that mental internal chatter to be abundantly clear. And then you want to ask yourself whether that supports your self-belief or damages it. And I'm guessing it's going to be damaging it. The next thing that I think you might have to do is notice where you're not trusting yourself. And you're treating yourself like someone who shouldn't be trusted or who isn't trusted. And this might sound like a weird one, because self-belief comes when we trust ourselves and our abilities and our skills. And even if, let's say you're in a new job and you don't know everything in terms of you haven't come across some of the particular situations before, but if you trust what you do know, you can have self-belief even in situations that you haven't dealt with before. And I'm not saying you go all cowboy and gung-ho about it, but you probably know enough. Because of your skills and experience, you probably instinctively know how to handle something. If you're trusting your skills and abilities, and you'll know the limits of them too. But if you're not trusting yourself, even if this is subconscious, and it's usually happening subconsciously, it's very difficult to have self-belief. So just look at, am I trusting myself or not? The next thing, number 3, is around failing to acknowledge anything good and really focusing on the negatives. So imagine you tell me you're doing a rubbish job. And I'm like, okay, what percentage of, let's actually like get a bit forensic about this. What percentage of stuff is actually rubbish? And you tell me, like 15%. So I say, well, so 85% of it is good. And you say yes. And there we have it. We are micro-focused on that bad 15% or that crap 15%. And we're not acknowledging or looking at all at the fact that there's 85% which is good. This kind of doubting has you like twist that. I mean, that it seems wild, that, doesn't it? But that is what our brains will have us doing, like focusing on the 15% when there's another 85 behind it, patiently being like, "Oh, I'm doing quite a good job for this 85%," and you're like, "Yes, but look at this 15. This is terrible." And usually that's just a case of learning how to kind of lift your head up and look at the whole thing. And then being able to acknowledge the 50, the 85%, which is good. Acknowledge what you are doing well. just like you would like somebody else to acknowledge the things you are doing well. Don't be withholding it from yourself. And then the fourth thing is check your standards. Check whether your standards are just unachievable in the circumstances, and then you're just feeling like crap for not meeting them. So if this is a new job and you don't know absolutely everything, check your standard. Is it reasonable that somebody 3 months into this job would know absolutely everything? Probably not. You probably wouldn't expect that from anyone else. So just check your standards, because if you've got completely unrealistic standards for, the situation that you're in, for the circumstances, for the resources available to you, whatever it is, it makes life difficult because you can't meet that standard probably. And then because you can't meet the standard, you tell yourself, well, I'm just not good enough. I can't do this. Why am I even here? And you imagine what that does to your self-belief all day, every day. So if this is you, just notice those 4 things. What's happening with that internal mental chatter? Are you trusting yourself or not? Are you focused on the negative and failing to acknowledge anything good? And do you have unrealistic, unachievable standards? Because all of that is going to be getting in your way and making your life really difficult. If this episode resonates with you, you have 2 options for coming to work with me. Right now, the Confident at Work program, which is a small group coaching and training program for women, is open for our April group. This is the kind of thing that we work on within the Confident at Work program, and we have very good results. So if this is you and everyone else believes in you, but you don't, you can come into the program and we'll get you to a place where everyone else believes in you and you believe in you too. The second way is that you can just hire me and work with me one-on-one. And we'll coach through all of these things individually until you believe in yourself the way everyone else believes in you. I'll leave the links in the show notes so that you can go and have a look. And if you're not on my email list, come and get on my email list. I provide weekly confidence coaching on Sundays. So for a lot of people, either drops on their weekend or they get to read it on a Monday morning before they start work. Come and be part of the community. All right. That's what I've got for you today. It is 7:40 on a Friday morning. So this podcast is going out slightly later than the usual 6 p.m. So if anyone normally listens to the podcast walking their dog on a Friday morning, I'm sorry if it was too late. The podcast is continuing to go from strength to strength. I don't know what's happening at the moment, but there's more and more people listening all the time, which is amazing. Maybe you guys are sharing this with people. I don't know. But if you do find this podcast helpful and you think somebody else would, then do share it, because some people are completely alone with these issues. They don't really know where to go with them. They don't know where to turn. They don't even know that somebody could help them. And yet here I am talking about them every week. So put this podcast in someone's hands that needs it, and enjoy your week. And I will see you in the podcast next week. Bye.